Hello, welcome to the last presentation of the disability module. In this presentation, I will discuss in detail the ICF classification. In the previous presentation, we have seen in detail the biopsychosocial model. In this presentation, we'll put the biopsychosocial model in the background and we will see how the biopsychosocial model is assembled within the ICF classification. This presentation thus is divided in 4 parts. First, we will see together the general structure of the classification. Then we will observe the first level categories which make the skeleton of the classification, and then we will see some of the more detailed categories, at least the general structures, including thus the second, third and fourth level categories. And finally, we will apply the classification system to look at the nutrition-related categories, which of course are strictly linked to the goal of the ENNEADI project. So, the general structure. So, the ICF is a hierarchical classification which describes health and health-related states on the basis of the biopsychosocial model. The main descriptors of this hierarchical classification, or the main elements, are categories, ICF categories, which are related to functioning and disability and contextual factors. Within the ICF, there are thousands of categories. These are the figures of the very first version of the ICF classification. The exact number of the current ICF classification, which was delivered in the last months of 2020, but which is not still available on the public, are unknown. So basically, the major number of categories are related to functioning, with 493 categories for body functions, 310 categories for body structures, and 384 categories for activities and participation. There are then 253 categories for environmental factors, and 0 categories for personal factors, because, as we already said, personal factors are not classified yet within the ICF. So, what are the elements of the classification? If we start from this figure, we can say that there is an horizontal structure which is made of 2 parts, which are functioning and disability and contextual factors. Each part contains 2 components, which are respectively body functions and body structures and activities and participation. Whereas for the contextual factors, the components are environmental factors and personal factors. But also within the ICF, there is a vertical structure which is made of categories. Categories can be first, second, third level categories. The first level categories are actually called chapters. And the category, regardless of the level, can be considered, and actually is, the classification unit of the ICF. Of course, as we said, the the categories can be found for body functions, body structures, activities and participation, and environmental factors, not for personal factors. So now we will learn how to identify ICF categories, which is characterized by an alphanumeric code and some numbers. ICF categories, when are linked to an ICF qualificator of qualifier, constitutes an ICF code. The ICF qualifier, which we will not deal with within these presentations, is a way of quantifying the degree of functioning or disability. So let's now have a look in detail at the first categories level, which are basically the main structure, the main skeleton of the classification. So let's start with body functions. Body functions, you may remember, are the physiological functions of body systems, including psychological functions. Within the ICF, they are identified by the alphanumeric code B, by the letter B, which stands for body. So we got basically 8 main chapters, named from B1 to B8. So we got B1 mental functions, B2 sensory functions and pain, B3 voice and speak functions, B4 functions of the cardiovascular, hematological, immunological and respiratory functions, B5 digestive, metabolic and endocrine system, and we will see that within this chapter we'll find most of the categories related to nutrition, B6 genitourinary and reproductive function, B7 neuromusculoskeletal and movement-related functions, B8 functions of the skin and related structures. Basically, this could be the main summary, the main index of a physiology textbook. Then we got the body structures, which are the anatomical parts of the body. So basically all organs, limbs and their components. They are identified within the ICF by the letter S, which stands for body structure. Basically we've got 8 main chapters, numbered from 1 to 8. And again, this could be the main index of a textbook of anatomy. You can see that basically the structure of the body functions chapters and the body structures chapters resemble one another. So for instance, for B3, voice and speech functions, the corresponding structure chapter is structures involved in voice and speech, and so on. Regarding activities and participation, we may remember that activity is execution of a task or an action by an individual, whereas participation is the involvement in a life situation. So activities and participation within the ICF are indicated by the letter D, which stands for, maybe in the original version, for disability. Here we got 9 main chapters, D1 to D9, and as you can see, activities and participation are contained here together. There is no distinction between activity and participation as there was in the biopsychosocial model. This because any activity, if it entails involvement in a life situation, becomes participation. The main example is represented by walking. I think the category is D450, which usually is it represents participation. So I can walk to go to shopping, can walk to go to work, etc. But in the case of a person with disability who is starting walking in the gym as a part of a rehabilitation treatment, so therefore walking is not used to participate but just as a therapeutic exercise, then the same categories D450 indicates an activity rather than participation. So there are 9 main areas from 1 to 9, so learning and applying knowledge, D2 general tasks and demand, D3 communication, D4 mobility, D5 self-care, D6 domestic life, D7 interpersonal interactions and relationships, D8 major life areas, and D9 community, social, and civic life. Regarding the contextual factors, we know that they contains both environmental factors and personal factors. Regarding the environmental factors, the definition is the physical, social, and attitudinal environment in which people live and conduct their lives. Within the ICF, we got 5 first level categories, 5 chapters, which are indicated by the letter E, which stands for environmental factors, going from 1 to 5, so E1, products and technology, E2, natural environment, human-made changes to the environment, E3, support and relationship, E4, attitudes, and E5, services, systems, and policies. Personal factors are constitutes the particular background of an individual's life and living, which is not part of an health condition. As we said, they are not classified yet in the ICF. Actually, I had hoped that in the 2020 revision of the ICF, we could find some classification of the personal factors, but unfortunately, no consensus has been reached on how to classify the personal factors. Which are the personal factors? Are like gender, age, race, religion, education, professional, social background, other health conditions, like for instance history of some past disease, but also very personal things like past experiences, character and personality, lifestyles, belief, expectations, life goals, self-esteem, self-discipline, resilience, acceptance, and whatever. It is unfortunate that the personal factors are not classified yet, because all these things can act either as a barrier or facilitator, exactly as the environmental factors. So we have looked at the first level categories, and now we can go deeper in the deeper level, which are the second, third, and fourth level categories of the classification. So here we can see a typical ICF category, which is read S73020. Basically, each category is identified by an alphanumeric code, where we got a letter, which is the prefix, which indicates the component of the ICF involved. Thus, S, structure, B, functions, D, activities and participation, E, environmental factor. The numerical code is based on a variable number of digits, depending on the category level which is represented. So let's look at this in detail. So the prefix, as we said, shows the place in the classification. So in this case, the component is S, so we know that this category is related to structures, body structures. The number of digits indicates the level of detail. So 7, the first digit, indicates the first level. So this is chapter 7 of the body structures. 30 indicates the second level category is always made by 2 digits. Then we got the third level categories, which is indicated by one single digit. And then we got a fourth level, which is represented by another digit. So basically, when all 4 categories are employed, we got an alphanumeric code of 1 letter and 5 digits. So then, once we got the full category, we can actually look at the classification and see what this category stands for. Particularly, this category indicates the bones of the hand. So, how can we locate any category? So, how is the ICF classification organized? We will look here at the book, because the ICF classification is published as a book, but we can actually later on observe a web version of the classification. So this is how a typical chapter of the ICF classification appears. So basically up there we got the chapter which deals with sensory functions. So this is we are within the body functions, so this is the chapter B2. Then we got, so that is the first level category. Then we got the second level category, which is down there, B210, which would be seeing functions. After that, we can see that the category is followed by a definition. So seeing functions is related to sensory functions relating to sensing the presence of light and sensing the form, size, shape and color of the visual stimuli. Then there are inclusions and exclusions. So for instance, looking at inclusions, we can see that seeing functions includes functions like visual acuity and visual fields and etc. and impairments like myopia, hypermetropia, etc., the diplopia. Also exclusion. So for instance, perceptual functions are not included in seeing functions because there is a specific category for that, which would be B156. B1, of course, is the first chapter, would be mind functions. Then we got the third level category, which had a further digit. So we got B210, which is visual acuity functions. And again, there is a definition, seeing the functions of sensing form and contour, both binocular and monocular, for both distant and near vision. As we can see here, there is only the definition, not the inclusion and exclusion, because at this level it's not that easy to make confusion with other categories. And finally, within each third level category, we may have several fourth level category, like for instance B210, binocular acuity of distant vision, B210, monocular acuity of distant vision, and so on and so forth. Again, the fourth level categories are followed by a definition. What are the advantages of classifying with ICF? Basically, the ICF is a standard language by which we can transform any health-related information coming from patients, coming from health operators, physicians, nurses, physiotherapists, speech and language therapists, social workers, educators, etc., occupational therapists. So it's basically a sort of universal translator of the functioning and disability information language. So it constitutes a common framework by which you can describe health and health-related domains. We must remember that, according to the World Health Organization, the ICF does not classify people, but simply describes the situation of each person within an array of health or health-related domains. Now we can try to apply everything we have seen and learned so far to specific nutrition-related categories. We will, for this purpose, we will look at the ICF classification, which is online. The official classification is on the World Health Organization website. Okay, I've moved to the internet, so we can, to find the browser, we can actually type ICF browser. We can type also World Health Organization, and immediately the website is found. We click on that, and this is basically the ICF browser. We got the 4 main components: B, body functions; D, activities and participation; E, environmental factors; and S, body structures, which are ordered by alphabetic order. There is a search field, so we can actually search for most categories. So for instance, we can search for appetite, and we find the relevant categories, and we can actually click on any of them. So this is a second level category, which is located in the body functions, and the first chapter of the body functions, and the second level category is 30. So B130 is energy and drive functions. This is the definition. These are the inclusion, and these are the exclusion. We can go back and look at second level category like appetite, where we got just, as we said before, the definition. So we can search our categories in this way, or we can actually browse the classification. So we can actually, so we got the 8 main categories. Then we can go, then these are grouped. Then we can go, for instance, here I've got all the second level categories. So if we go here, got B130 energy and drive functions, and here we can find the third level function. As we can see, in this case there are no fourth level categories. To find fourth level categories, we need to go on the sensory functions and pain chapter, where we can find the example we have seen before. So where we can find the categories which are related to nutrition within the ICF? Well, most of them are located within the fifth chapter of the body functions, functions of the digestive, metabolic and endocrine system. So we got all these functions here which are related to nutrition: ingestions, digestive functions, assimilation, defecation, weight maintenance functions, and sensations associated with the digestive systems. Other are located under the metabolism section, like general metabolic functions, water, mineral and electrolyte balance functions, thermoregulatory functions, and endocrine gland functions. But as we can see in a minute, there are also other categories. Now let's go back to the slides. So here are a few slides which summarize what we have seen so far. So these are the digestive functions related to nutrition. So for instance, we got here the second level categories. For instance, within ingestions, we got B5-10-2 chewing, B5-10-5 swallowing. For instance, chewing and swallowing may be related to impairments like dysphagia. Digestive and assimilation functions may be related to malabsorption. Defecation functions may be correlated to, may be linked to constipation and diarrhea, which are important impairments which can actually impact on the nutritional states. The weight maintenance functions can describe, the condition of being underweight or obesity, which of course are strictly related to the nutritional state. And sensation associated to the digestive functions are, for instance, nausea, fullness, sensation of being bloated, which again can impact on the digestive functions. But also there are in this chapter other important categories like B540, general metabolic functions related, for instance, to catabolism, and we got all these categories here. And for instance, this is very important, B542, protein metabolism, because this is directly linked to proteic malnutrition. Whereas B549, fat metabolism, is related to dyslipidemia. Then we got water, mineral, and electrolyte balance function with the related categories and impairments, very important, dehydration. The thermoregulatory functions, B550, with, for instance, B551, maintenance of body temperature, is something that is often referred by patient to have problems in this category. And finally, endocrine gland functions, which is a category which is related to hormonal balance. But also there are other categories in other chapters, like B1, mental functions, as we said, energy and drive and appetite, which can be linked to fatigue and anorexia. Then B4, 55, exercise tolerance function, which is related to fatigability. And then S72, which can be used to describe sarcopenia, that, as we know, may be one of the consequences of malnutrition. Now we have seen in detail the ICF classification, and now we should summarize everything with these three last slides. So we have to remember that the ICF is a hierarchical structure in which we got 4 level categories. First level categories and second level categories are generic categories, which actually fits most purposes. The second level categories quite often are quite informative and can be used to describe functioning in most individuals. In some specific cases, it may be useful to add third level and fourth level categories. I must say that in my experience, I've never used fourth level categories. In rare instances, I've used third level categories to classify disability. Of course, there is an increased specificity from the first to the fourth level. As we said, generally speaking, first level categories are too broad. Second level categories are quite informative and fit for most purposes, as we said. It has a divergent structure because generic categories contains various specific categories, as we have seen. Most categories, the second level categories, include definitions, except for the structures component, and also the second level category includes inclusion and exclusion criteria. This classification can be used as a common language. It is actually a common language and a translating a coding tool for health and health-related information. It provides a scientific basis to understand health and disability. It allows to make comparisons between individuals, between services, between policies, and therefore can be used to for service development purposes. Again, I need to give credit to the ICF research branch from which I've downloaded some of the material which are presented here in this slide. And again, I would like to remind you about the possibility of visiting the ICF research branch website for further learning materials about the ICF. Thank you very much.